Welcome back. Welcome from the Queen City, the Radio City, the great city of Cincinnati in Ohio. No longer a swing state, I'm sad to say, in the semi-democratic nation of the United States. Glad to have you guys here. Welcome to the party. Those who were with me at Tony's place, I hope you've come on over. Hopefully we've got some new folks checking us out from various other locales. We're going to talk today about Tulsi Gabbard. A lot of people did not know that she has quite a checkered past that would have predicted she'd end up where she is today. But there are a lot of folks that did not listen when she was walking around calling herself a progressive and a liberal and leftist and a Bernie fan and all the other things she pretended to be. And then there's Matt Gaetz. You know him. Dude's got a forehead that could be used as a... you could use it as sort of like a balloon at one of those concerts and just sort of a beach ball and hit it around. He's not smart. He's a Nepo baby whose daddy made a lot of money. He was in the state house or Senate. I think Tony said it earlier. Was he speaker? Probably. Drunk driving. They made a phone call, made that go away. Literally, members of his own party talked about the trafficking charges against him, and they were going to come out in a report tomorrow. What a coincidence. He resigned 2 days before the report could be released, and therefore the House Committee, Oversight Committee loses all jurisdiction and the report doesn't come out. Leak it. They leak everything else, like their Donald Trump's diaper. Leak that too. Not Donald Trump's diaper, the Matt Gaetz thing. Trump's diaper will leak on its own. That's why they put the towels at Fox and Friends. Actually, I think that was when he's on with Pete Hegseth, our probably new future Secretary of Defense, who found it gross enough he had to put a towel under Donald Trump, but didn't wash his hands. So what did you do after you pick up the towel under Donald Trump? Do you wash your hands then? Or do germs not exist? I don't know. I'm just trying to figure this all out, the right-wing view of science and way of life. Hey, Cliffs Club. All right. Starlene, good to have you here. The rich don't seem to get in trouble with the law. No, funny that. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, all these people who were just lionized, loved by the media have been committing the same damn, from sexual harassment to assault, from money laundering to extortion, from, money disappearing from their companies into their coffers, campaign finance violations, somehow never prosecuted. Elon Musk was literally like, hey, would you like $1 million to register to vote for who I tell you? I don't know that anything will even come of that. Musk is in on it, folks, which is why I have mostly left the Twitter machine. I might as well tell you again now. Blue Sky. Find me at Blue Sky. I'm there much more often. YouTube first, Blue Sky second. Not much else third. Hey, Case, we're going to have a good day. We're going to talk about this. We got Robert George coming on in about 25 minutes. He's a smart dude. Oh, crap. The Ozarkian's here. Who the hell knew our favorite guardian of the galaxy would get here already? Let's get him in here.
I got my Ozarkian hat on too, the Bass Pro shops.
That's awesome.
The guy who owns it, he's a kind of a scumbag Republican, so I feel bad when I wear it. But
why don't you just cross it out or something and wear it?
It's part of Ozark culture. It's Bass Pro Shops. When I was a kid, Bass Pro Shop, now they're like really big, huge museums and stores. But when I was a kid, they were like little minnow shops. Is what they were, because I grew up around Lake of the Ozarks, so they were just minnow shops. You go in and you buy. They'd have minnow pools
around the lake.
Minnows. Yeah, exactly.
We all know all about it because we watched the show, so we know more about it than you two now.
Oh shit!
I'm sure nobody ever tells you that they know exactly. Right. I didn't get that.
I love that when people are like, "No, I watched the show," and they're like, "Is it?" They'll ask me, they're like, "Is it really like that?" And I'm like, "Well, somewhat." But see, the difference is that in the Ozarks, we don't have pine trees. We have cedar and oak. And in the series, it's shot in Georgia where they have a shitload of pine. There's not cedar and oak, which is what is in the Ozarks.
So you're smart enough to spot the problem. It's kind of like,
so when I look at the setting, it's a nice setting for the series, but it doesn't look like the Lake of the Ozarks.
Right. It's kind of like my whole life when I got told about what the New York that I grew up in and was living at the time was really like by people that had seen it in movies. Right. It's really, really dangerous now. And I'm like, pretty safe actually. Like in the 90s when it had been cleaned up and it was safe and it was like, they're like, it's well, I saw that scene where on that street where that person was getting beaten up and robbed. I'm like, that scene was filmed in Calgary. So you may want to.
Right, maybe want to rethink of what you think about of a city, the city in the movie. Right.
Right. Exactly.
So I want to correct something. I want to correct something because I did.
Hangers. I like that. Go
I
ahead.
did misspeak. That is good. Cliff edge hangers. I did misspeak in my monologue, I believe it was, in my A block.
No.
Where I said that Matt Gaetz, his dad was the Speaker of the House. I misspoke. He was the Senate President. Excuse me. He was the Senate President. He was. So
you may have heard me because I was saying I knew it was something, but I was clear. I wasn't sure.
Well,
and
I did misspeak, so I want to point that out. But I don't know that there's much difference in the situation that we're in between whether his dad had the power in the Senate or had the power in the House at Florida.
Also, as we know, it's about money. It's more that his dad was rich as hell and probably greased all sorts of palms with his real estate development deals. I'm sure broke all sorts of laws. Allegedly, again, I don't have any proof, but I wouldn't be shocked. Ohms, who became a new YouTube member, thank you so much. We like new members. But what we know his dad did is he put a lot of money into the Republican Party. If you put a lot of money into the Republican Party, you can run for office. You can do almost anything. They like money. I mean, you can be a senator who looks like Skeletor from Florida, get reelected by a huge amount, and have committed the largest Medicare fraud in U.S. history. Right. Or at least you were the CEO of the hospital that did, and you took the fifth on 50 different occasions, I believe, maybe 100. Like, seriously, he broke a record for taking the Fifth Amendment.
And not only that, then Trump wants him to be the Senate Majority Leader.
Trump lost that one.
Right.
They went with Mr. Thune, who's much more of a proper Republican.
What's your? Because I'm not at all boned up on Thune. To be quite honest, I know John Thune. He is quite the character. Because he's Mitch McConnell's cigar buddy, I think his brandy and cigar buddy from South Dakota. But John Thune has worked his way up through the Senate for being in the Senate for that amount of time. But I don't know why they would choose Thune over Cornyn. I guess because Greg Abbott and Texas Republican politics right now are cutthroat, and they would absolutely throw Cornyn to the wolves if Cornyn was the winner over Thune. Thune's a little safer. Is that the way you take it, kind of?
No, I take it as, Texas sadly just proved itself safer than we hoped it would be. I take it quite honestly, as again.
No, it's not safe. It's not safe as in Democrats would beat them. Safe as Republicans would eat Cornyn.
Well, that's possible, but I very much take it as that Mitch McConnell still has the power there, and Thune was his guy, and I don't know that was a good thing by Mitch. Again, dictators like to eliminate their internal power, their internal rivals first, because they want to consolidate their power in their own faction and then party and then country. So keep doing that, Mitch. Keep poking the bear there. Yeah, because again, Thune was like the loyal lieutenant always to McConnell. I don't think he ever challenged him. I could be wrong, so I want to make sure, but I don't think he ever challenged him for power. I think Cornyn did challenge McConnell for power. So I think Thune was the guy that McConnell wanted, and people forget McConnell raised a lot of money from a lot of corporations, a lot of dirty money to get all sorts of people there elected. That's why when people would be like, Susan Collins, she'll do the moderate thing. I'm like, not if Mitch McConnell gets to her and asks her to do something different. Same with Murkowski. Murkowski's a little more independent, but I think the main reason that Murkowski, after getting kicked to the curb, not this past election, the one before, and winning as an independent, went back to the Republican Party is because McConnell asked her to come back and supported her. And so in the end, he's the only independent power source I can think of who has a legit faction behind him. So good, Mitch. You may want to check your six, as they say, and you may want to get yourself some of them bodyguards. Not Pete Hegseth, because he wears a symbol on him, and he'll probably be more loyal to Trump. But find some other ex-soldiers that you could probably have protect you. In any case, that's my take on it. I could be completely wrong, but it seems to me that McConnell is showing he still has power there, which isn't good news for Trump or for the little sun monitor what's his face? The guy that likes to go clubbing at certain clubs late at night. Mike Johnson, that one. And I say certain clubs, of course, I mean completely completely straightforward clubs that we would all hang out at.
Straight. Okay, yeah.
Right.
It is kind of pathetic though that we're seeking some kind of comfort in Mitch McConnell's power. That's kind of.
I'm not actually. I know, but too. I just want them to fight.
I want them to eat each other. Yeah, right. I want to point out something. I think it's Seattle Judy. She's correcting me on another thing here in the chat, and I may have got this wrong. I want to point out when I'm wrong. Seattle Judy said Tony said he was paying attention to Bernie Sanders when he was 4 years old, and I may have misspoke a little bit on my show when you were on there, and I said that I've been paying attention to Bernie since he was elected in Congress, and he's a congressman, because Bernie Sanders, I believe, was elected in 1991. But Judy, if that's the case, I was 6 years old in 1991. I wasn't 4, so you're wrong as well. But I will say, Judy, what I meant to say, and I think this is important because of our media and the discussion we were having before. The reason why I want to bring this up is because Bernie Sanders was a regular on MSNBC right about the time of 2002, 2003. And the reason why is because Bernie Sanders did want to make a Senate run, which he did, and he did win, I believe, in 2008.
It was either 6 or 8. He was in one of those because we had 2 very good elections then.
Exactly, and Bernie Sanders was getting out on media because Bernie Sanders wanted to run for statewide office as the U.S. senator, and he accomplished that goal by doing a lot of media, and that's and that was Bernie's first media tour. Now, he had kind of built a fan base because of that media tour. He didn't just become the U.S. senator; he kind of became an influencer in that leftist type group. He did a lot of videos. He did a lot of media back then, and a lot of people don't know that. But then when it came to 2016 against Hillary Clinton, that was when a lot of people discovered him, especially younger folks. So I apologize, Judy. I was wrong. I misspoke not when he became a congressman, but when he was a congressman. He was a congressman. Right. So I just want to put that out. I think it's important. Clear. I think it's important that we point out how Bernie became popular. It was the media that made him popular. Yeah. It's the reason why all these right wingers become popular. It's the reason why they want to get on Fox News. It's the reason why they want to say crazy ass shit when they're doing this stuff.
Yeah, there's some of them I don't get. Some of them it makes complete sense because Ted Cruz just wants to promote his podcast and be president someday. I always wonder. It seems like every week Tom Cotton is on. And again,
on Fox News or Newsmax or which one?
He's on like Meet the Press or CBS, like on the Sunday shows, right. And it's like I'd like to have a negative charisma off of like JD Vance versus Tom Cotton versus Josh Hawley. Like Cotton just goes on, sits there, never smiles. I've never seen the man smile. I don't think says nasty things and leaves. Like that's his whole shtick. I'm not sure why he does that. He never.
Josh Hawley does the same thing. Josh Hawley does the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, true, but Hawley made clear he wanted to run for president.
Well, right. Well, do you think Josh Hawley wants to run for president? You think that's what his goal is?
I do. I mean, I think he'd take other things. I think if he couldn't do that, he'd run for governor eventually. So at least he could be an executive of Missouri. I think he'd run for, I think he'd hope to be in this administration in some capacity. I think he would be happy as a VP to somebody. I think anywhere he can in his mind get more power, which is really what he is after in the end.
Isn't that kind of crazy? Isn't that kind of crazy though? That the idea that a human being would mark their whole career with just sometimes vile, toxic sludge just to become in a certain position for a certain period of time. Isn't that kind of like pathetic? Isn't that pathetic in a way?
It's extremely pathetic, and there's a lot of people who are just like him. I mean, again, what is Marco Rubio if he's not that? Marco Rubio looked at Trump and called him a con man in 2016 on a stage, said that he would be selling watches on the corner, and he was actually right about that. If he weren't, because he, of course, ended up selling watches. if he weren't running for president, that he just was a too big con man. He was dangerous to let him take over the Republican Party and all this and that, whatever. And now he's going to be Secretary of State because he had a complete 180 and started kissing Trump's rather large rear. I mean,
diaper covered large rear.
I can be funny and say bad things without cursing, so that I don't lose my.
I keep forgetting that I'm not allowed to curse on this show. I need to remember that.
I hate it, man. But they deem like I won't be able to do this anymore. I won't be monetized.
Well, you know what you do. You know what you do. Here's what you do after this broadcast is over. You can go into YouTube and you can actually clip out the part that I'm on. You just like clip me out. You just like cut me out of the whole. Just cut me out of the whole broadcast.
We're gonna do that every time. It's gonna be like Tony was never here.
Right. So like every single time you're like, here's the Ozarkian, and then it like skips right to when I'm leaving. Like, see you guys later. They're like, wow, Tony was there for like 2 seconds and then he's gone.
It'd be kind of a fun thing to do. No, there's too much love there, Tony. Too much.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
You and I are gonna take one of those pictures.
Don't BS me.
Shirtless.
Don't BS
you and
me. Don't BS me.
Like, you know that one people created with Putin and Trump riding the horse shirtless together. That's gonna be you and me.
You think there could I'm sure there's meme makers in the chat that are they're already making that meme and they're already planning on posting on social media right now. I would almost bet that there are people, especially in my community. These people in my community, they're ruthless.
They're tough out there, huh?
Oh man,
I know.
Ruthless.
You know how I know that?
How's that?
Because I saw Ozark.
There you go. Cliff,
So,
I hope you have a great conversation with your guest. I think that's quite the perspective that they might have on some of these appointments.
Well, also, I'm trying to remember. Rob is really interesting. He's either, I don't remember which, so I apologize, Dominican or Haitian. So he may have something to say about some of those attacks in Springfield that, of course, initially came from Russia. The one other thing I wanted to say also, what this reminds me before you leave, is, again, the other thing that I still angers me is I don't believe that Bernie has ever acknowledged and said it was crap that Russia was supporting him in the primary, which, again, the CIA has provided plenty of evidence. Okay? And I don't think Bernie is a bad person. I think he believes what he truly believes. He's not my favorite and all of that. But I would think that you would come out and you would sort of mention that and say, I don't want your support at some point. Stay away.
On one point before I leave, and then I'll get out of your hair. I'm trying to find a way to say things with less curse words right now, and that sometimes it's difficult for me. But anyways, I can do that. Here's what
makes me mad too.
Here's what I'll say. No, it's not maddening. It's just it makes me think more, which is good. I need to think more, which might be a dangerous thing. But here's what I'll say about Bernie and Hillary Clinton. The thing that frustrated me most about some of the debates between Hillary and Bernie was Bernie kept talking about, and the Bernie bros would be like, release the speeches, release the speeches, release the speeches. Do you remember this? Release the speeches, release the speeches. And it got so frustrating because I'm like, you know what she said. So, and you're saying you know what she said. So why are you so concerned? And you know how much she got paid for these paid speeches. And by the way, Bernie Sanders has also been paid to make speeches, by the way. And he did not release those speeches. Not only that, he did not release his records.
Yes, you have 3 houses? Because I don't.
And he also did not release his records from him and his wife running a certain university. Yep. So I beg Bernie Sanders to come at me about transparency. So
I just get annoyed by the hypocrisy of it. I think Bernie stands for the right things. I do believe in his heart he meant well. But he some of that bro culture that we're drowning in now, he helped perpetuate in that primary. Russia pushed a lot of it. He employed some of it. I don't think he means it, but I think there are other Democrats who the generations that you're from often, influences how you act towards people. It does with me too, and others. And I think at his age, he was just used to, like, you're a guy, you dominate the conversation if there's a woman there. And look, I make those kinds of mistakes, but I think him a little bit more because of where he's from. And I just think he pushed some of those bro type memes that just felt sexist. And again, like I don't want to keep bagging on him. Because I really do think that perspective he has, whether I agree with all of his issues or not, is very necessary. I agree with most of what I really do. I think I agree with the majority of what he would say on issues, but and I think we need that anyhow, to the left, because we need that. But at the same time, I wish he had the self-awareness to understand some of the ways he did damage.
And if we've learned anything about this election, it's not about the issues of where you stand on the issues. It's about how you say it and what costumes you dress in.
Yep.
So I'm going to go.
So
I'm going to go
this
get out of
question before you leave
here.
it. Yeah. And then you can leave.
Yeah. If Cliff and Tony ran for presidential office, who would be POTUS and who? Everyone knows the answer to that question. Everyone, of course they do. Everyone knows the answer to that.
Of course, it would be me. I mean, no, absolutely. Dude, you're the regular guy.
I tell you what I'm gonna. Yeah, I am. I'm the regular guy that would get out and be able to mix it up with people who you wouldn't be able to mix it up with, maybe because you're president and I'm the vice president. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna reside to my Senate. Because the vice president, that's the only job that they have, is to preside over the Senate. So that's what I'm going to do, folks. As the vice president of Cliff's Edge, I'm going to go reside over the Senate. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, Cliff, for having me. And good luck. Good luck with your guest. And everyone stick around. As I always say, this guy knows what he's talking about. So listen to what he says about things, because he knows. We'll talk to you soon.
I do know some stuff. Tony's right about that. So look, the problem now is it's all about the money. And it always is, isn't it? But the fact of the matter is that Tulsi and Matt Gaetz and all of these folks, I thought I saw something there, they're there because Trump is going to be looking for ways to grift, and you need a good connection to Putin you can trust, and you also need to make sure you're not prosecuted by your own AG, that he's your attorney general. Remember, Trump said he needed his attorney general. Where's my Roy Cohn? You may remember, because that's how he thinks it works, and that's why he wants Matt Gaetz. Now, also, I think Matt Gaetz is a little bit of a stalking horse, because if Gaetz goes down and Tulsi Gabbard goes down, you still Pete Hegseth and others he wants don't seem as bad and get in there. I think there's sort of a number of things going on there, but part of it is he wants them in there. And again, it all goes back. I just was doing a video I put together on the movie. If you remember Network back in the day, that predicted our current news situation, and it's like, what is it? You have messed with the primal forces of nature. You must atone. There's no Russia and America. There's no Saudi Arabia. There's Exxon and AT&T. That's almost where we are. Yes, Putin is defending Russia, but it's because of the oligarchy. It's because of all of the private resources they put and created companies out of, that he stole and his friends stole. It is still, if you have never seen that movie, please see it. It is outstanding. And sadly, there are a lot of movies in the 70s that took a look at where things were headed, late 70s, that kind of time, some in the 80s, and they looked at where the network was headed, because back then it was unthinkable that you wouldn't put a news show on to actually educate people, give them public information, instead of just entertaining them to death, instead of just putting on something that literally would be about just misdirection. And I mean, maybe some of the shows in network are always like, this is the show with radicals shooting each other, and this is the show. Of course they had a Mad as Hell, I'm not going to take it anymore, and he would go off, and that was entertainment. That's kind of a lot like Joe Rogan or Bill O'Reilly, or some of what we have out there now. And if I'm talking about a movie you haven't seen, then I'll stop talking about that movie. But watching some of those scenes again, because I wanted to put part of that, one of my recorded videos, reminded me of what it is we're dealing with right now, which is, again, you are messing with the primal forces of nature, and when you do that, the primal forces of nature fight back. And now that's the broligarchy, because they're the corporate forces that in the end want to control everything and think that democracy is it's inconvenient for capitalism. And why would you ever get in the way of the broligarchy getting richer and richer and controlling more and more? Maybe the only thing that movie didn't see is it thought it would be big corporations that would have everything, right? The AT&Ts, and they do, but they didn't think about the actual in this country that we deregulate in the manner in which Reagan did in the 80s, so that we would have tax levels go down so much, right? And regulations and everything, so that we now have these walking corporations like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, these multi-gazillionaires that are just a human corporation. In Elon's case, considering the amount of personality he has, you could make the argument he very much is a human corporation, which, by the way, corporations are people, right, my friend? Isn't that what Mitt Romney said back in 2012? It's all come full circle. I think Robert George is here, but I do not see him. Robert, you are there, but I do not have a visual on you. Do you have a camera? Let's see. Maybe you'll work that out. We're going to give you a couple minutes because I can have you in here. I certainly can. It's not showing your microphone being muted. So I think we'll be able to hear you, but I'd love to actually have you on here and be able to see you. So go into your settings, make sure that you don't have your camera muted, or that you don't have tape or something over the camera on your iPad or iPod, or no, on your if you're using a Mac or something of that nature, or a PC. But I don't hear. Well, I don't know what to do. Robert, let's see. I will. Oh, there he is. You know what? We're going to bring you in early because you're cool enough that.
Are you hearing? Are you hearing me? Can you hear me?
I am hearing you.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and soon we'll all be hearing from you. No, I'm sorry. That was my George W. Bush. But
here we are.
Old speeches. I can't forget them. I gave mine earlier on the. I bet you'll know this. You are messing with the primal forces of nature. And do you remember that at work?
You're messing with the primal forces of that wasn't the Independence Day speech. No, that was a real speech.
That's right. That was a good speech too. From now on, the 4th of July, we're no longer just be an American holiday. Yeah. No, that was Network, and it predicted our future.
God, yes. Oh no, I'm shocked. Like,
Ned Beatty.
Network is my all-time favorite movie, and I can't believe I didn't remember that off the top of my head. Oh yeah, absolutely. I have to go. Every other year I have to watch that movie, and it always terrifies me that the farther and farther out we get from the movie, the more we get closer to it. I mean, it's just
they predicted it. Right? Like at first when he loses his mind on TV, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. And the reaction is, which would be similar, I think, to our current presidential situation, which is he seems like he's lost his mind. Let's keep putting him on TV because it'll get great ratings. We've gotten there. Yeah. We're there.
Yeah, no. And I think the last time I watched it was not this past, I think it may have been the summer before last. And the Faye Dunaway character, when they start talking about him, this is the voice of the common man, and it's
right.
I mean, there's just
it's crazy, and they knew it because they were looking at how things were changing and how at that time, because it was you considered news part of the benefit of, hey, NBC, we have a license to put all these TV shows and whatever, and they give us this license for free. So we're going to do some public good. And part of the public good was you provide the news. Whether it made a profit or not was not what was important. And suddenly that changed. We had Brian Karam on earlier on Monday, talked to him a little bit about that kind of thing too. The most important thing was this was your public good. You delivered information to people, to voters, to residents who would want to know things about people fleecing, local government fleecing them, or whatever it might be, that this is what you did. And then it became a profit center. I think 24-hour cable was some of that when CNN first went on there. I'm sure there are many different forces and people that are more expert than me, but we've gotten to this point now where it is ratings, and it's killed it. It's killed news. News is entertainment. If Trump brings better ratings, we're going to have Trump on the news. But I want to make sure before I kick it back to you that I properly introduce you folks to Robert George, who is illustrious in many ways. Used to be we were a contributor way back in the day on a show on CNN with Jake Tapper and some other folks, the old version of Jake Tapper before he went away for a while and came back, a TV guy. you were an editor. Were you top of the line? You were the at the New York Daily News. I'll let you tell it. What did you do? Tell everybody.
Let's go this way. So I was on the editorial board of the New York Post for 16 years, and
Boo! Just kidding.
Yeah. But and it was from that perch that I was on that brief CNN show called Take 5, which debuted in March of 2001, and its last episode was in September of 2001 because a certain large event made people realize,
something in September of 2001.
Yeah. What might that be exactly? So anyway, I was at the Post for 16 and a half years. I went to the Daily News for four and a half years, and then was at Bloomberg for 2.5 years. And I'm now either, depending on how you want to make the term, I'm either freelance, between gigs, or whatever other term we want to come up with.
But I would disagree with this between anything, because you're not doing the most important thing here. And one of the reasons I had you on was because I appreciate, first of all, that you have a sense of humor. This man is a stand-up comic, and he's not trying his routines on us right now, but he could be.
I could
he very much could. But also, this is all important that you have a Substack where you write very intelligent things, which I choose to read. So why don't you tell people where to find that? We'll do it at the end too, but I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you.
Right.
Your Substack.
It's called, the URL is thepunstack.substack.com, but the title of it is Ragged Punstack, and that the RAG are my initials, Robert A. George, and and of course, like many people, I did a autopsy analysis of the election, and my background for your viewers and listeners is obviously more right of center. Before I got into journalism, I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked for the Republican National Committee. I worked for Newt Gingrich for 3.5 years.
Cliff, did you? I didn't even know that. Oh God,
okay. Cliff, you can do another. You can do another boo now if you want to.
Well, I've talked about before. I consider him to me that is the moment when we went from the gentlemanly Bob Michael of Illinois, who had been moderate and who had tried to legislate, and there were definitely conservatives in the Republican Party, and there are a couple of bomb throwers. I would tossers in the rhetorical sense in the Republican Party, B1 Bob Dornan, for example. But but overall, the party, it was Newt Gingrich to me is what changed the direction of that party forever, because I'm just going to say it. I think Newt's a complete clown. I think he always was. And I think he was always about power first and whatever that it took to get there, which, GOPAC and these other things that he corrupted. I'm not trying to insult you. I am a huge unfan of Newt Gingrich, though.
I understand where you're coming from, and I will also say, Newt has changed significantly since I worked for him. But I will, though, going back to that period, and I think something that should at least be recognized because I've heard that argument that Gingrich, was the precursor to Trump and so forth. And in terms of aggressive, in-your-face tactics, I take that point. But I think it's important to at least recognize that when the Republican Revolution came about, the so-called Republican Revolution came about in 1994, the lead communication tool for that was the contract with America. Now you can
remember that Frank Luntz.
You can dispute the issues that were on there, but I think that something that's important to at least recognize is that it was an issue an issue-driven agenda. There were some specific things that the conservatives at that time wanted to get accomplished. Whether it was a balanced budget, welfare reform.
Right.
I mean, again, we
and some of them were accomplished. To be clear, it's just I don't want to go through a whole rehashing, but in some ways they had Bill Clinton on the run. Now, granted, he then won in '96, and actually that was where I got my start. I worked at a polling firm for a couple of Democrats who are now Republicans, Mark Penn and Doug Schoen, so we all have our issues to deal with, who were doing Clinton's polling in '96. Yeah. And so maybe his comeback, but to me, that's why the whole impeachment sort of crusade never made sense to me, because he was giving in on things like welfare reform and the Telecommunications Act, things that I, in hindsight, think were bad. I think Bill Clinton did some very good things too, but those things were, in my opinion, very bad.
But my point was, and I think that the distinction between the Gingrich Republicans and the MAGA Republicans is that MAGA, and one of the reasons why I sort of became more in the Never Trump camp, it's issues are secondary for performance and attitude, and particularly owning the libs, as they say.
Very much so, yeah.
The fact Trump can just say, oh well, tariffs, tariffs are the answer to everything. The only issue,
it's not a tax on you, it's a tax on China, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And the conservatives of the 90s, at least it seemed to me, didn't feel like they should insult the intelligence of the voter that way. Now you may want to disagree in terms of those ideological specifics, but I think just from that standpoint, there is a difference there. Now, what is it? What we're talking about now? 30 years later, Newt is sort of rubber stamping almost anything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth and so forth, and c'est la vie.
Well, I mean, my again, and I know this is the last thing I'll say on it. The reason why I was saying what I was saying about impeachment was not for any other reason. I mean, I do think it very much harmed our norms. It was an early beginning to where we, over political differences, started using our system in a way that it should not have been used for power. Okay, we can have that conversation, disagreement, agreement, whatever it is, another day. But my issue that never made sense to me is, yes, they led with these issues, the contract with America, right, in '94, most of which I would disagree with. But you, in some of these, you had a partner in Bill Clinton, and when you got rid of Bill Clinton, if you were successful in impeaching him, you still were going to have Al Gore. So it just never made sense to me why they did that. That felt more like a power play. I don't know, and I could be wrong, because if the issues came first, you had a guy that signed welfare reform and signed some of the other stuff you did. So it never made sense to me, and still doesn't. But
we should recognize that when the Republicans took over, I'm going to get into sort of a philosophical, sociological observation here.
No, I'll give you the last word on this, and we can then talk about the more current.
But when Clinton came in '92, he was the first baby boomer president. When in '94, when the Republicans took over the Congress,
right,
Gingrich, it was the first baby. It was the baby boomers, in a sense, having control of most of Washington. The Senate took a few years to catch up.
True,
as it often does. And the baby boom generation, that's kind of the way they roll. I mean, you've got a lot of them are intellectual and things like that, but they go with these passion plays, and you end up with this sort of an extended amount of chaos when boomer vision quests end up clashing. And I mean, I think the impeachment was the first iteration of that. And I think that the last 10 years or so, in terms of our politics, are just another manifestation of that. The Trump, the Trump ascension is baby boomer agonists, playing out in one last gasp before that generation fades into the.
This is actually a good point here too. All by Celery 08, that it did actually. I mean, if it's about power,
great point.
Well, it did. Gore, you could almost say that, but that's kind of touches upon my point, right? Which is, if it was just about power, you hurt Clinton, which hurts Gore. So you're thinking now way ahead. You're not thinking about the fact that Clinton's signing this stuff. You're just thinking about maybe it'll help us win in 2001. But if it backfires and it doesn't win, and it doesn't work, and Gore ends up winning, and Gore is a vitriolic type or whatever, then it may backfire. I mean, you're taking a risk, but maybe they knew Gore wasn't the type that would ever take revenge, even if he won. So, there's a lot of ifs and buts in there. But I'll just say, we could talk forever about this. I actually want to talk about what you wrote about in the Ragged Pun Stack. But before that, one quick question, because we talked on the phone, and I don't know that I ever continued to get a clear answer, and that's my fault. When did you really sort of become disenchanted and start saying, I'm not sure I'm a Republican anymore? Was that with Trump? I felt like it was earlier than that. Again, I thought you were more circa David Frum, who started doing it in the 2000 aughts, was unhappy with some of what Bush was doing around, some of the people he was appointing, heck of a job Brownie and some of that. And, as I remember, but I could be wrong.
No. That's fair. In fact, my first apostasy, I guess you could say, was 2004, and partly a reaction on the Iraq War, which was not that I thought the Iraq War should not necessarily have been fought, but the fact that, as we learned, there were no weapons of mass destruction, and the response from the Bush administration was sort of like oh, so what? Hey, we're in there. We got to finish the job, and that kind of
and to be clear, I don't mean to cut you up, but it also was to destroy Joe Wilson and his wife and anybody else who pointed it out. But okay.
well, that too. No, but so I didn't like the lack of accountability on that side. I didn't like the ramming through of the what do you call it, the Medicare Part D prescription drug stuff, which might have been legitimate as a policy, but when the Republicans realized that they were having difficulty getting this through. We're going back a long time now, but Tom DeLay basically kept the vote open in the House of Representatives for 3 hours. These are supposed to be, 17.
What's hilarious,
yeah.
Robert? I just have to say quickly, and I'll go back to you, but I knew you were going to say this because I'll never forget when that happened. And just for everybody here listening that hasn't, hasn't been paying attention closely to politics over the last 30, 40 years, just to understand how far we've come, to where Donald Trump can now fake perform fellatio on a microphone, and it's a story for a day. In terms of breaking norms, and talk about the size of Arnold Palmer's schlong. Another breaking of a norm, you would call it, I think. I don't think anyone else had talked about the size of a golfer's wang before that, but okay, maybe I'm wrong.
Not the usual wood we talk about when we're talking golf, right?
Well played, my friend. Well played. Should I start getting into hole in one? Nah,
no. Back nine.
So,
no.
Oh my God, we'll do it forever. So we better stop. But yeah, that was a huge scandal because again, that was another breaking of a norm, which is you were not supposed to hold. I don't remember. I didn't work in the House ever. I worked on campaigns. Was it 15 minutes, 5 minutes, however long you were supposed to hold a vote open?
17 minutes is the usual vote usual vote in the House, and they kept this open for 3 hours. Where,
like searching in the bathrooms in the cloakroom for hiding Republicans who didn't want to vote for it, just so they could pressure them into doing it. It was like it was a big story then.
We later found out that that one of the members was basically told, vote this way. We know for a fact that your son is running for an office in back in your state, and vote this way, or we're gonna ruin his political future. I mean, there was a lot, and that actually became such an issue that I think the House Ethics Committee even
did. See, but there to me was another sort of. Again, you could use the boiling of the frog analogy, use whatever analogy you want, but it's these steps. I mean, Tom DeLay was a thug. And when you go and you put that man in control, a man who again, threatened people in the manner in which he did, you were making it okay to be cruel. You were making it okay to extort and threaten from leadership. And cultures in organizations are defined from the top down. What you see the folks at the top doing, generally you'll adapt to, because that's what you need to do to survive in that organization. And they're allowing some of these people, the Republican Party, to behave this way and to stay in leadership. To me, is where this all starts going way downhill. But in any case, okay, so that's around the time. So
I wrote a piece where for the New Republic, actually, where I said that as a conservative I couldn't support President Bush, and I said, oh well, if for those of us with
for re-election, you mean?
For re-election, yeah.
Wow, so you were dating, because I think Frum had broken away by 2004. Or maybe I'm wrong. You may have been earlier than Frum.
Yeah. So I said that if you're a libertarian, you go vote third party, vote for the libertarian candidate, but that's kind of where I am, and so that was kind of the beginning of my disaffection. And so over my adult life, while I've been I'm pretty consistent in terms of voting Republican at the local and state level. At the presidential level, I've voted Republican. I've voted third party. I've voted Libertarian. I've voted, and of course, the last couple of elections, obviously, I've voted Democrat as well. So it is what it is.
Did you vote? I mean, it's funny because I think about, did you vote for Republicans? So I saw some great change. I mean, over the years, you see some changes in the Never Trumpers, right? So I used to have, you came on once, that podcast I did with John Aravosis, Unprecedented. I think we ran it from about, what was it, 2020? I mean, we stopped it, obviously, we kept trying to do it, and then, Unprecedented was about something, and he had lost, so it kind of lost its zeal. But I want to say 2018 to 2021 probably sounds about right, something like that. And I remember early on we had Rick Wilson on, and he still was somebody who was arguing like he was hoping Rick Scott would win in Florida. He just was anti-Trump. But you saw the evolution as he realized you couldn't be for these local guys and anti-Trump, because Trump now owned everybody, increasingly, right? Increasingly, it was all about fealty to him. So did you still keep voting for local Republicans even sort of then? Or, I mean, in other words, did you start seeing that if you vote for a Republican, they're kind of, with the exception of a dozen, and then suddenly a half dozen, and then suddenly it gets fewer and fewer who actually have any independence? I mean, at this point.
So I'll put it this way. I finally, and this has much to do with New York.
And if you're not comfortable, we don't even have to. You can go just straight to your thing. But
this has much to do with New York politics as it does with national Republican stuff. It wasn't until 2021 that I finally changed my voter registration, and I changed my registration from Republican to Democrat. But that was because I realized, given the dwindling Republican presence in New York State, and particularly New York City, it made more sense for me to be an enrolled Democrat, so I can at least have some influence in the Democratic primary.
I gotcha.
And particularly when we switched over to ranked choice voting here in the city as well. So that was where I suddenly thought of myself, okay, I'm sort of making a break here, and it is partly because of where the National Party has gone, but also my own personal sensibilities.
Well, it was different locally. I mean, and I can speak to that. Growing up in New York, and where I think it was, and I think literally is right. The congressman who represented my district, now eventually Carolyn Maloney won it, a Democrat, but initially it was Bill Green, a Republican, who was ranked, if I remember correctly, the most liberal Republican in the entire House. So even my Democratic parents loved him because he voted to the left of like at least a third of the Democratic caucus, because the parties hadn't sorted as much then. You had a lot more Southern Democrats and Western Democrats that were pro-gun and anti-choice and all this stuff. And Bill Green was like as liberal as you could be, because he came from the sort of John Lindsay, the old sort of the Jacob Javits background of the Republican Party in New York City, which was again it was pretty far left. So we voted for him, and then for a while in the state Senate. So I did after I got out of college, when I lived there, I voted for Bill Green, who was a Republican. I also voted for Roy Goodman, who was our state senator and was very influential, because he was I remember he refused to go to I'm trying to remember whose it was. Was it Bush Senior or in 92 or it was Dole in 96, refused to go to the convention because he said the platform wasn't worth an ounce of spit or some comment like that to the local news, because that's how liberal he was. So we actually, my family, which was pretty liberal, voted for a couple of Republicans because it just was a different world back then. I try to explain that to people that they won't believe me now, and I get why, but it weren't just moderate Republicans. They literally were liberal Republicans who everything you believe right now would probably agree with you. Something different era.
Yeah, interesting point that you raised there, Cliff, because again, we were talking about the party really changed because of Newt Gingrich. But if you want to go back a few years before that, remember Javits lost his reelection to Al D'Amato, and D'Amato sort of represented the emergence of a more what could be considered a more aggressive type of
conservatism,
of conservatism, and it's been something of an evolution over the decades, and
Yeah, but what's funny is, again, and you're right, it is an evolution over time, because if I remember correctly, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but in 2020, D'Amato endorsed Biden. So D'Amato, who had moved over.
I don't think so.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. I'm 95% sure that's.
Then maybe it was another Democrat. I remember seeing D'Amato endorse a Democrat and being like, oh my God, he was like the bête noir in my house. My parents both hated him when he took that from Javits and became the Republican senator from New York for 2 terms or 3 terms, whatever it was. And so I took notice.
I think you maybe
hold on, I'm going to look, because I'm not to.
The person, one of the people who was one of D'Amato's biggest allies was Guy Molinari, and Susan Molinari.
She definitely did.
She endorsed Biden and then endorsed Harris this time around as well. Let's see. What that's a good question.
Let's see. I'm trying to find it, because and again, we don't have to obsess over this, even though I am right now. But it's all because when my memory fails, and maybe it is here, but I was almost sure that D'Amato did.
Because the thing is, D'Amato was so entrenched in the New York Republican Party, and the war, and Trump had been circling around that for so many long.
So maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. So I'll get back to what we were chatting about. So how about see people bring this up. This is something funny, and even you have to appreciate this as somebody who is a comedian, that the Onion buying InfoWars and then putting up on the site, we are going to do our best to make it even more stupid than it is now. Among other things they wrote, I thought was hilarious, and that is epic in terms of trolling.
That is really hilarious, and it's actually, I guess, because it was only, I think it's within the last 6 or 7 months or so that the Onion sort of got revived with these with a bunch of younger people who had been some who had been in media and journalism and so forth, and they decided to buy it from their former owners, and so now turning around and
right.
And now
Ben, what's his face, is the editor now. Who's
Ben Collins? Does that?
Yeah, and I always liked his work. He was on the disinformation beat.
Yeah, he was NBC's disinformation muckraker and so forth.
And he put, he was one of the ones, and when I would speak out and be very critical, and I know you follow me on Twitter, where I'm doing a lot less now and whatever, but used to be doing a lot more. And a lot of my criticism, of course, is of the both sidesing and the pretending everybody's the same and a lot of this. I don't want to get into that. I already had that discussion a couple times, but Ben Collins was one of my favorite reporters, because I always felt like his rule was, I'm telling you what I find to be the truth. You can disagree with me, you can think I'm wrong, you can do whatever, but I'm not going to pretend everything's the same. I'm going to tell you whether whoever it is, Republican or Democrat or independent or green or whatever, who's at fault here. In any case, all right. So now you go and tell us what your breakdown. What happened in 2024?
Okay, so I would say it's 3 parts, and the very first one is the short version, which is as we were talking about the 90s, as James Carville said back in a previous time, it's the economy, stupid. And by one metric, of course, what Biden was pushing, unemployment is low, wages are starting to expand, things like that. There was a good story that Democrats could tell. However, the over-abiding one, and was something Trump was able to tap into, was inflation, and almost every major Western economy that has had an election since 2020, the party that was in power during the pandemic lost the next.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to make sure people understood that there are always many factors, right? I mean, people try, it's the easy thing in the world to make it very simple and say there's one thing, this is the one thing, but this happened across the Western world. So clearly this was something.
In the UK, it was by in retrospect, for those who are left of center, it was by just a stroke of luck that the Labour Party had their epistemological freak out a few years before the Democrats did here, and they lost the general election in 2019 because Jeremy Corbyn, their leader, was become portrayed not completely unfairly as being anti-Semitic, or I should say allowing anti-Semitic parts of the party to fester, and the
pretty far to the left, I think.
And the Tories had this huge victory in 2019, coming out of Brexit and all this other kind of stuff, which allowed them to be in power when the pandemic hit. And then you had farces like Boris Johnson having parties while the pandemic was going on, and so all of the bad stuff mid-pandemic and post-pandemic that happened in the UK fell on the heads of the Tories, and they got a shellacking earlier this year. You saw a similar situation in France, with the Macron.
See, I was hoping we'd be like them, though, where we would pull together all forces against the fascist right and end up pulling it out.
Not so much. So
not so much.
So we've seen 2021 in Italy, they had the turnover. So that's the umbrella explanation. But in the context of the Democrats, it's not the only explanation from my perspective. And one of them, we'd have to because if you look at the map, the entire U.S. map moved slightly to the right, with the exception of, I think, of Colorado, which stayed where it was, and Washington, which nudged a little bit. Washington State nudged a little bit to the left. However, in the swing states, that red shift was about 3 points, and that was enough for Trump to sweep them. But some of the largest shifts we've had are in blue areas, which suggests to me a major dissatisfaction with the voters there on democratic governance. And it probably
didn't happen. It probably didn't help in New York if the mayor was indicted.
Well,
but it happened everywhere.
Yeah, the mayor was indicted, but also there are issues involving how he was or was not handling the migrant crisis. But liberals actually were also upset with Governor Kathy Hochul because she was flip-flopping on congestion pricing. She came out with a new idea just to
I saw some of that stuff.
In San Francisco, they had a nonpartisan mayor's race there. The incumbent, London Breed, lost because of frustration over homelessness and crime and so forth. In California as a whole, they had a referendum which increased criminal penalties on shoplifting. It's in Chicago. Chicago, I think, if Illinois, I think, moved like 10 points towards Trump. I mean, it was such a large.
Can I bring this up though? And I mean, it's a form of what some folks are saying in here, which is there is so much disinformation. Violent crime is actually down, right? Now there's other things going on there, but I almost felt like some of that played into the fact that people thought that violent crime was up and they were actually wrong. Now, I don't know the stats in every individual city. I can only speak as the country.
I agree with you, but I agree with you that the data says crime is going down. However, if you're in New York, San Francisco, LA, even Atlanta, you're going into a drugstore and you're seeing everything behind glass, and you're having to wait for to get somebody to unlock it and get things. The thought process there is that something's wrong here, and many of these cases, particularly in San Francisco, one of the responses this was coming to was people seeing the smash and grab shoplifters and things. So you can tell. I
guess my question to you is, because you may know better than me, but you do know better than me, because I don't know what the stats are. Is that stuff? Because I know violent crime was down, but is that kind of crime actually up, or is that just what people thought? Because even the people that own the stores might be locking stuff up because they're misinformed, right? So I guess I'm asking, is this based on perception, or is this based on stuff that was actually really happening? And I don't know the answer. I'm really asking.
The exact reason. I like to think that that individuals, and to your extension, to your point, corporations are people too. they're going to act in a ultimately logical /
Well, based on the information they have, they're going to act what they think is logically, but they may not have the right information.
If they feel that if they feel that they are going to be that customers need regular access to whatever they're getting off the whether they're getting off the shelves,
Yep.
but they're losing so much because of a shoplifting issue, and after balancing that, they're going to make a determination to keep these things behind glass.
I see what you're saying. That's fair. It's based on accounting, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. And I had I talked to a person at the counter. Was getting a prescription, and I said something about the glasses, the stuff behind the glass, and so forth. I just said, "Oh yeah, we have kind of have to do that." And then she kind of just said, and I didn't even press her on this, but she just she said, "Well, frankly, sometimes not even the glass helps. They'll ask you to unlock it, and right after you unlock it, they grab everything and run out, and they'll have a security person at the front." But the security person is often told by corporate not to engage because they don't want to have a violent attitude.
Right.
They don't have a violent episode within the stores. So, my broader point is that post pandemic, where everybody is still trying to get back to normal, there's this kind of a sense that things are not yet things are not there. And I think this is particularly pronounced in blue states and blue areas. Because remember, rightly or wrongly, the South, the red states decided to, quote, go back to normal in the pandemic sooner than many in the blue states did, and. I mean, there was a big debate, obviously, over.
No, obviously, I think that was a no-win.
School closures and so forth.
Right. I feel like that was sort of a no-win situation, because if you were doing it for the right reasons, which is to make sure that people were not harmed by a pandemic, eventually people were going to get stir crazy and get angry at you, no matter what. So there was almost no. In other words, I do think it's a lot of reason why incumbents were kicked out. Because sometimes, as people like to point out, after World War II, Churchill was kicked out because they decided, hey, thanks for the job you did, but we just went through a trauma and we'd like to forget about it. We're going to move to the next guy.
I know we're getting close on time here, but the governance issue is an element of this, and finally is the cultural issue. And I think we may not like it, but I think history will later bear out that Donald Trump's trans policy ad with the tagline "She's for they them, he's for you" is going to go down in history.
It was very harmful. There's no doubt.
Like the Heidi commercial in in 64. It's going to be one of those commercials that really sticks.
I feel a little bit like Willie Horton in '88, if I'm being honest with you.
Well, yeah, no, that's fair too. That's fair too. Brutal.
Remember, they're demagoguing on something that and they show her with the whole prison thing. There have been 2 cases of prisoners who had gotten
Cliff,
reassignment surgery, right? So
remember, but the thing was that issue that ad pierced through because they used Kamala Harris's words against it, particularly on the issue of surgery for trans prisoners. But it also stung on the other policies related to trans girls in playing in girls' sports.
Right.
The question of gender affirming care for younger, for pubescent and prepubescent children. This
I think it even went beyond that specific issue to like, we're for you and they're for people that are different.
It's a tagline. It's a tagline that can speak to, while definitely zinging specifically on the trans issue. It does speak to, you're frustrated with the bureaucrats that were running the lockdown. You're frustrated with the teachers union that kept schools closed. You're right.
You're mad about inflation. You're mad about, like that kind of, which again, I would point to Willie Horton, which I think spoke to a much broader issue, right? Like Dukakis was against the death penalty, and Dukakis was perceived as somebody who wasn't tough enough. And so it was beyond just the specific Willie Horton case. They were using race to me as something to broaden that we're strong, he's weak. He's not going to protect you. We are, which is a lot of what this felt like.
In this case, he's strong, she's weak.
Right.
In this case,
right.
And I will also say though, but I think related to that, and I think this is something this is a discussion that I think progressives are going to have amongst themselves.
We've had some of these on this channel, by the way. We've talked about some of these things.
But it is, and your background is in political campaigns, and the importance of communications there. I think to the extent that the progressives have allowed academic language to infiltrate not just political campaigns, but corporate America and so forth, I think it's done something of a disservice on the ability of Democrats to be able to speak in clear language to some of the communities that they need to reach out to. I mean, whether it's the pronouns,
right,
because of you don't want to offend non-binary audiences, or whether the Latinx debate, or whether LGBTQIA plus and so forth. Look, I'm gay. I'm gay.
So
even I get. I mean, really, do we need to have like this? Do we need 26 letters to explain all these identities? I mean, you want to, if you're talking to an audience, you want to have a clear message and to speak in language that the most people are going to be able to hear and understand. And I think the
broadest. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think a component of this also, again, right-wing dominance of media institutions now, and I'm talking about like Fox News, and I'm talking about Sinclair, and I'm talking about Salem Radio, and I'm talking about essentially your local talk radio everywhere. The megaphone is so much bigger that they're able to take things that I don't think necessarily people even know about or is big of a deal to them and blow them up and make them issues in a way, just the way they make every year. It's, on Fox, it's War on Christmas time again, which will be soon. Soon we'll be back to like 2 cases of where people, took down a tree, and it'll all be all about, the liberal war on Christmas. I mean, the right is very good at that. And I'm not saying because we have had a discussion on this channel about a couple of things. I'm not saying, I even asked the question of, do we need to have a white Christian straight male as the Democratic nominee to win, just because of the easier way it is to demonize anybody else? I mean, these are the conversations I want to have. And we have had about trans issues and other issues, but I do think it's not that maybe some of it, but a lot of it is that the folks on the right can cherry pick a couple things that don't exist in many places that are not usual and blow them up out of proportion. I do think that has to be a part of the conversation, which is the lack of infrastructure when it comes to media on the left. That's my opinion anyhow.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say that Fox on its best days I think attracts what 3 million, maybe 4 million viewers. In contrast, the so-called, shall we say, the mainstream media, the nightly news is still 3, 4, 5 times as many eyeballs on there.
No, that's a fair thing, but also remember that 3 million Fox is getting is more than CNN and MSNBC combined. And a lot of the folks that are the ones who are watching Fox often are also listening to Hannity on the radio or whoever, I don't even know, listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, or there is, getting emails. I mean, obviously I have some of these folks in my family. I know some of these people, and they're getting these same sources of information. They're getting these same messages from 5 or 8 or whatever, however many sources of information, and they have families and they have churches that go to, and it broadens out. It's like concentric circles broadening out. Fox News is only one element of it. When you start adding in Sinclair, they own a station here in Cincinnati, maybe 2, right? They own, a lot of swing states, and I know this because, as I like to point out, back in the day, I was the liberal political analyst on Sinclair in 2004 who debated with Armstrong Williams as well who eventually
my old friend Armstrong. Yeah,
your old friend Armstrong. We actually found out was being paid to push No Child Left Behind stuff. I don't want to just rip him up or whatever, but I also was inevitably debating a host too. And then they would have somebody come on the way they had Boris Epstein come on, who would do a commentary afterwards that all of these markets had to carry. And it's not just Fox. If it were just Fox, I would agree with your point, but it goes well beyond that to numerous various outlets. There's no liberal equivalent to Sinclair that owns news stations around the country that has a liberal commentary come on right after the news that is on in every market. There's no liberal equivalent that I'm aware of. They tried Air America, and there's some economic issues there, to Salem Radio that just syndicates Christian radio throughout the country, right? Though it's more than just Fox, I would argue. But I understand what you're saying.
No, that's completely that's completely right. It's completely legitimate. But as I said, I do stand by my point, though, that to use the line from Cool Hand Luke, for some of you progressives, what we have here is a failure to communicate, and I think that's it. And I think it's important that a lot of these, talk radio has skewed right for decades, but your Bill Clintons and your Barack Obamas and the structures that they created around them figured out ways to cut through that. And my concern is that the current progressive ascendancy culture doesn't have the wherewithal.
No, I think that I would agree. Look, I'm not fully arguing with you. I think there's 2 things going on. Well, let me say that I think that, one, you do have to acknowledge that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama are literally would be, over the last however many years, along with Michelle Obama and a few others, on your Mount Rushmore of public speakers. They're 2 of the greatest orators of the last 30, 40, 50 years, which helps you break through when you're fighting the right, when you're so charismatic. And we're not going to get somebody of that ilk every time. Now, you can point out Biden won in 20. Obviously, Trump created some of that made that possible. But again, this is not to dismiss what you're saying. And I've said I'm going to have an honest conversation with my audience, and I have. That even if I disagree with you somewhat and think a lot of it is not just the failure to communicate to a large degree, as we've relied on mainstream media that is just more worried about profit now than anything. And if Donald Trump gets some profit, they'll have him on. We even built our own structures to communicate as effectively as the right. And I do think that's a big part of it. But yes, some of the exclusionary language, and I've talked about that, in the group here. When I've been on certain listservs for the last 10 years and I've been told to shut up, explicitly had people say, "Shut up, you're a white guy." That's not helpful. And all you're doing then is saying to somebody who is your friend, who works with you, who wants to be in the trenches with you, go away. When we start defining everybody by who they are, as opposed to all of us as a whole, you exclude people. And I've been consistently saying this. To me, the whole definition of the word liberal, right? Liberal, liberty, open, truth. And that's one of the reasons why that's how I define myself, as a liberal. And I sort of stopped defining myself using the word progressive, because I felt like certain folks, certain Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush type folks grab that, who I think have a hierarchy of who's more pure than who. And that is a loser, besides also being immoral as far as I'm concerned, because there are a whole lot of people out there that are with you, no matter what they look like, whether they're white, black, brown, gray, or green, and whatever, whether they're trans, gay, straight, whatever, that want to be with you and want to be on your side. And, the worst of what we hated, at least I would say I hate, about 50 years ago, about Jim Crow, about, the sort of anti-sodomy laws and whatever, is that we were picking on people and saying, "You're less than." And we shouldn't be saying that to anybody. There shouldn't be you are, in the end, you're less than because of your immutable characteristics. I don't believe we should be sharing them. So on that one, I agree with you. I think that they still do take little fissures and blow them up in right-wing media that don't really exist in the way they would portray them. But I do think we have to work on people who are anything from moderate to liberal to leftist to whatever, on a language of inclusivity that invites more people in. Because you're not going to win if you're saying, "Well, you said you used the wrong word because you're 80 and you don't know better." I mean, I guess we say the national, it is the only way I can say this, because I'm worried people get angry at me, right? The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. Well, my grandfather, who was a literal FDR, liberal leftist his whole life, used that word, the C word, when he would refer to Black Americans, not because he was against them. It was because that's what he grew up using. Sure. And he thought it was okay. We had to remind him and convince him, like, we don't use that word anymore, Grandpa, But he wasn't using it in a negative way. He didn't understand. He had fought for civil rights at a time when most people did not, and he didn't have to, but he chose to. That was the legacy of my family that I was taught. So I absolutely believe we have to all remember that people, especially from different generations or from different areas, whether you're from a rural area versus an urban area, or whether you're from this part of the country or that we have to be inclusive of everyone. And maybe, the first thing shouldn't be, if somebody uses the wrong word, the wrong initials, the wrong whatever, is to assume they're doing it in a bad way. First, let's see who they are. And if they're doing it in bad faith, that's different. But if they're coming in good faith and want to be part of it, let's try to invite them in. There's my spiel.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But I think also that, and again, this goes to my point that that the language of the academy, which sometimes is absorbed faster within certain groups, and I think this may reflect the fact, more, and the Democratic Party is getting more and more a portion of the college educated voter. However, we recognize there are more Americans without college degrees than there are with college degrees, and I think
it was only 37%, if I'm correct. I think the stat I saw. So actually, my group, ironically, whites, I think it was white men specifically. There are only two groups that voted in higher proportions for Kamala than Joe Biden, and it was white college-educated men, ironically, and it was Black women. Those are the two groups
actually, I thought it was white college educated women that voted in.
I thought they already were through the roof. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just white college educated at a higher rate. I meant like a higher percentage. I'm sorry.
It increased, but it was not a majority. Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, correct. The only two that were in the right direction. Women are still above. White college educated women are still far above, white college educated men. No, we're not nearly as good on issues as men never are as women, it seems. But I'm just saying.
So it's partly it's partly that language usage, but also the fact that they're not necessarily they're not quite where, say, the liberal edge or the progressive edge is on the basic concept. I mean, it was just like, Can
I say one thing quickly, because I just want to address why I put this up, and then I want you to remember what you're saying. Celery 08, while the right calls us libtards, because I want to be very clear here. I'm not talking about how we refer to people that would refer to us as libtards. Call them whatever you want. Okay. I mean, if somebody's in a place where they're calling you a libtard already, I'm not saying be nice to bad faith MAGA scum on the right. I mean, if you know me and you know what I do and you've read anything I've written or whatever, I am very not nice. I come up with ways to creatively insult them as much as I can, and often would use many curses and many bad words that I'm trying not to use here because I don't want to be demonetized. I would call them very bad things. And the oligarchies you're pointing out there, all the right-wing Peter Thiel crowd that thinks that they're going to live forever and sees the rest of us as goo, I use very bad words for them too. When I'm talking about with Robert here, are regular folks, are people that can be won over, are people that don't just look at us and say libtards, are people that probably are in the middle of the road politically, or may lean a little bit right, or may even lean a little bit left. And we lost a lot of them in this election, and some of it's because we failed to communicate with them. If somebody's at the point where they're referring to me as a libtard, trust me, I have a lot of words back for that. Usually I'm not bothering because they're an egg on Twitter and they have 3 followers. But if it's a person that's worth responding to, I respond with fire and brimstone. So I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about people like that. I'm talking about people who honestly, in good faith, believe in the things we do, because the majority of people believe in the things we do. In any polls, the majority of people are pro-choice, do think assault weapons should be banned, do think there should be universal background checks, do believe there's climate change so we should do something about it, do believe that if you're gay or trans, you should have rights, do believe, I mean, it's on and on and on where they're on our side, but we're not communicating with them. So again, let's differentiate people that we lost this election because we didn't communicate with a loud enough megaphone or correctly, versus people that would call us libtards. They can go stick it up there, what. Okay, done with that. Go ahead, Robert. I just want to be very clear about what I'm talking about, not apologizing to bullies. You punch bullies in the mouth.
Yeah, no. And
go ahead.
I think we're agreeing on that. Though I think it was just a couple of days. It was just a couple of days after the election. I think, and on CNN, there was this exchange between this guy, Shermichael Singleton, who's a black Republican, and
I've heard his name. I don't know.
And he's one of their regular contributors on there, and we ended up, sort of having this discussion about the she's for they them, he's for you, that ad and its impact, and it was also in the context of what seems like that Trump sort of increased his votes among Black men and Latinos as a larger group and so forth. And
Latino men was a huge increase. I mean, that was that was big.
And Shermichael said, I think some of these this ad resonated in some of these communities because you have people who, and this was his language, are uncomfortable with the idea of boys playing in girls' sports, and this other panelist, I think he's a white rabbi from Michigan, jumped on him. He didn't even let Singleton finish his thought. He just jumped on him and said, "I'm not going to let you, these are not these are not boys playing girl sports. These are trans girls playing these sports. I'm not going to let you engage in that transphobia. And they went up, and then Abby Phillips jumped in and sort of, in a sense, gave Michael sort of a struggle session, saying, "Well, I know you didn't mean to offend, but blah 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 blah." You know, it's not just a case of recognizing that it takes some people some time to catch up with the language. It's also a recognition that there is in many spaces actual still, you know, debate as to whether if you just if somebody just declares that they are now, you know, that they are now a woman and they want to have access in women's sports and girls sports and things like that, is that smart as policy?
So can I say quickly, Robert, when I say that we've had those conversations, we had this literal exact conversation here. And the reason I brought it up is I said, I am in favor of everyone's right, and I will support them 1,000,000,000% to be who they are, to eat in any restaurant they want, to work anywhere they want. There should be laws that protect everyone, when it comes to that. But the thing I said is, you can't, you know, if you just refer to somebody who brings up what you just did as a bigot right away, I just said, I don't think this is a huge issue. I think the right blew it up into something that made it a much bigger issue and out of control. But I do think, again, it's legitimate to have a conversation about this and say, and it doesn't make you a bigot to bring up the point. And what I used is, I come here in good faith. I support the trans community in every way I possibly can. And I don't even have to say, individuals, humans, in every way that I can, whatever you choose to be. But I talked about myself, and I just said, look, I was a sprinter. I was recruited to Division I colleges, and when I ended up at one of them and I was sprinting, I don't think I was in the top 300 to 500 men, right, on rankings. And the 55 meter, I made a list at one point, but even then, if I was in the top 200, it was a big deal. I would have made the women's Olympics team. I was faster than, outside of Florence Griffith Joyner, who we now know I think did steroids, or maybe she didn't. I don't know. I think she did. I was faster than any of the women on the Olympics team.
Questions have been raised. That's that way.
Yes, they have. So I think that is a fair conversation to have, because whenever you're now doing something that affects other people, women have worked hard in sports to get to where they've gotten to get to where they can win, and now you're coming in and have this kind of natural advantage. I think it is unfair not to be able to have that conversation, and that does not make you bigoted. If you say, I hate you because you knew from when you were young that you were born in a man's body and you knew you were a woman, you're a bigot, as far as I'm concerned. If you, any kind of job discrimination, housing discrimination, any way you treat someone with disrespect, insult them, whatever, you're gross, you're a bigot, and I have no place for you. But when it comes to the sports, well, now you're affecting other people. And my view always is democracy is we have all the rights in the world until we're affecting others. And then it's about the public square and the common good. And we have to be able to have conversations. Yeah. And so I've already, I've said that on here with folks. And I think we are, this audience is a smart audience, and we are mature enough people to see the difference there between, what I said in terms of your basic innate rights versus things that we have to have conversations about. There you go.
Absolutely.
And I don't know about this. Again, this is why I say conversations, Amy, because I'm not claiming to be an expert. This is why I've said there need to be conversations. Because if puberty blockers are used, the musculature does not develop the same. See, maybe that's true. I don't know. But if we're not, the reason I don't know is because we're not talking about it, because we don't talk about it.
But that of course is, I think I'm using this in the right phrasing here. That literally begs the question: is a puberty blocker an appropriate type of process, a procedure? Do we?
For someone who's at that age,
are we? Yeah. Are we so sure that a 8, 9, or 10-year-old is mentally aware of themselves enough that they can actually assess that they're, quote, in the wrong body. I do know that.
Thank you, JD Christie, for the super sticker. Go ahead.
There's been retrenchment on this issue in Europe. The UK has kind of backed away from some of these prepubescent gender affirming care kind of decisions. We're also seeing it, I think, in Denmark and some other. So it seems that the American Medical Association and the American Psychological Association sort of came to a consensus within the last 10 years, but the actual public debate, or even some of the debate within the medical community, perhaps might not have been as vigorous as it could have been. But that's neither of us.
I'll be honest, I don't know enough
experts to have this conversation. But
that's the thing, is I'll just say I would like us to be able to talk more about these things, and I'll admit it, just for very specific reasons. This is one of the reasons I don't know enough, and I don't know as much. Right? Is if we're talking about it, maybe I'll learn, and we'll say, okay, you're right. There should be puberty blockers. Or maybe I'll say, but I don't know enough, and that's something that I wish we could discuss it more. And I have seen, Cynthia, what you've put up there about it just being 200 kids, and I get it. All right, so I'm not obsessing over this, and I'm not. To me, the bigger deal is the quickness with which some call others bigots, and instead of understanding that people arrive in good faith and are good people, then and you trust that and who they are, then accept that, like, conversations we can have them about some of these things, and try to come to conclusions that make sense, and that are fair, and that treat everybody with dignity and the rest. So anything else you got, Robert? We kept you here long, and I want to do some quick chatting with folks, and we can't go over 2 hours, or they won't even let me share this stream again. They freak out on me. No. I'm glad you stuck around.
Yeah,
and you have a different.
We didn't even get a chance to talk about the fun and games in Trump's cabinet.
I know.
Cabinet
that would have been more fun. We could have ripped on them together.
Well,
another time.
I think I will quickly share one of my tweets from yesterday, when we found out that just a couple of days after Trump was demanding that the Republican Congress go into recess so he can have he can make these appointments that wouldn't require Senate approval. He made this recess appointments, and then yesterday, of course, he announced that Matt Gaetz, who has been charged with chasing after, let's say, young ladies below the age of 18.
Something that generally is frowned upon when you're generally 40.
Generally frowned upon. So it made sense that Trump was obsessed about recess appointments, because recess appointments is what Matt Gaetz calls his younger dates. So
there's the comedian side, and and it's true, because he's gross, and the worst part of it all is that, of course, he resigned 2 days before the report was going to come out in the House, and the House Oversight Committee.
The House Ethics Committee report, yes, exactly.
Ethics Committee, I'm sorry, it loses jurisdiction, and now somebody, as the joke I made before you came on here, better leak it like Donald Trump's depends do on that Fox sofa. They put the towel under him. Yeah, see, I can do that too. Because we need to know.
To quote you, Cliff, ooh.
And there we go. So listen, man, I really appreciate your coming on here. Substack, give it to us again.
We call it Ragged Punstack, or Punstack, thepunstack.substack.com. So
Absolutely awesome. All right, listen, thank you. And you have a different perspective than a lot of folks. So, I'll have on here. And I think it's important to even if I disagree with you on a lot of stuff, to have you on and to be able to talk. And
No, absolutely. I hope we can do this again sometime. This was a lot of fun.
Me too. Thanks for being on here, buddy. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Oh, I'm supposed to take you out. Sorry. All right, guys. So who's got questions? Who's got answers? Who's got so listen, guys, I mean, I know that Robert probably said some things that you greatly disagree with. I do think and I know that those of you that are on Tony's show has brought it up too, that we can't be attacking each other. We can't just be offended by everything immediately. We have to have these conversations. Again, important. It's not just about one or two things, but a lot of things. I don't want there to be a point where we become like the right and there's sort of, we say that we can't talk about anything and you're kicked off the island. Now, you may be wrong, you being one. I may be wrong about plenty of things. Sure, I am. But I want to be able to talk about things when I don't feel like we're at a point yet where there's, where they're fully consensus, there's full acceptance, and Lefty Grams, I am blue sky as hell. Yes, I'm on Blue Sky. That's the place. That's where I've been preaching for people to go, because I'm not saying it's perfect, but I will say that so far my God has been better than the other place. Let's try this, see if it works. There you go. Your guest looks at history through rose-colored glasses, Cynthia Rice. Well, he may. Cynthia, and you may have heard me, pushing back and correcting him on a lot of things. I'm not going to sit here and fight with him on everything. And again, I didn't disagree with 100%. But yeah, there are a number of things that, I could have sat here and insulted Newt Gingrich all day long. I think it's tough to defend in any capacity having worked for Newt Gingrich. I think they may put a contract, for America together. But as I said to Robert along the way, then they just went after Bill Clinton and tried to destroy him. I mean, I don't think they cared about most of the Contract for America. I think it was a marketing item. Now, they did, support some of those policies, but I think Gingrich always, maybe he acted a little bit better back then, but I don't think he hadn't changed as a human. He left he leave his first wife when she was in the hospital with cancer, give her divorce papers to go to the second wife? Or was it the second one? Yeah, he left the first one when she was in the hospital. He served her divorce papers when she had cancer in the hospital. And the second one, while he was trying to impeach Bill Clinton, he was cheating on her with the one he's currently married to. That's what we call MAGA. So there's more I could have said. But again, I didn't have Robert on here. I pushed back on things where I thought he was wrong. I made my points about where the Republican Party headed. And he is somebody, again, who may disagree with us on some things, but voted for Kamala Harris. And so, these are people we have to remember that it's probably better to have them vote for our people than voting for the other side, even if we disagree with them on some things. I know what you're saying here, Amy. What you're saying about just started on Blue Sky. Again, I had been on there for a while and just posting videos, which is, I switched that role to Twitter, where I don't engage and do anything. But now I'm not, again, I'm never going to be one of those that is on that a ton. I like my YouTube channel a lot more, but I'm on there now, at least probably posting 10, 15 things a day, and it'll probably increase. So far, I love it. I think I like it better than old Twitter even. I think it's got better moderation. If you haven't found yet where, I'll remind me, or I don't know, we'll have to figure out where to show you, but you haven't found yet where you can go to this one and push this one button and block everybody that has MAGA or Trump or anything like that. Not Trump, because people have anti-Trump stuff, but MAGA with a hashtag. I'm trying to remember what else. Trump 2024 and a few things in their bio. Boom. They disappear. It's like they never existed. It's beautiful. So I did that. And now they all don't exist in my world. All these little losers that are out there just because they're sociopaths and they are incels and they hate their own lives and they're in their mommy's basement in their pajamas, probably wishing they could find an old copy of Penthouse, or I guess they're going on online porn and their mommy's busting them for that. I can go on with this rant, but you know what? Why bother? I don't believe Matt Gaetz gets the votes. Neither will Tulsi Gabbard. Jim Williams. Jim Williams is a smart man. besides being my mod here and me really liking him for that and appreciating everything he does, he's correct. I do think that Mitch McConnell helped John Thune showed that he still has institutional power, that there are people that owe him their jobs because he raised them large gobs of dirty corporate money. So he still has enough sway that if he wants to turn even a few members of the caucus against Matt Gaetz, he can do it. Which means if Murkowski and Collins stick to what they've said, and I think they will, because I think McConnell would not want Matt Gaetz there and realizes how much that hurts all of them, then they will end up voting against him. And all they need, I think they're going to end up at most with 52 seats. Is that right? So you get a Tom Tillis in there or somebody, one of the other ones, they're done. But maybe McConnell will have a half dozen or a dozen of them. Maybe he'll think it'll look better for the party if there's a strong showing against Gaetz. Gaetz, remember, is hated by lots of people, right? And he's fought with, everyone. Fought with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Who do you want to win that one? He fought with Kevin McCarthy. He fought with, was it Mark Wayne Mullen, Jimmy, and that guy's a senator, right? Isn't he? I think so, from Oklahoma. He's attacked him, so he won't vote for him, perhaps. Or is he a congressman? I don't know what the hell he is. It's hard to keep track of Oklahoma. I apologize. But I don't think they'll have the votes. The question is, will Trump do recess appointments? Now, under the Constitution, I think they brought up, what is it, Article 2, Section 3, where the president can use emergency powers. And we know Trump's used them to pass tariffs before. So he's, of course, said, it's an emergency because I feel like it. Because my pissed cotton candy hair doesn't look good today. And he'll end up passing something. But in this case, Congress has to accept it. So they'll still be held responsible. They can't escape it, because if they allow him to adjourn Congress so that he can appoint these people without them, they'll still have allowed him to. But in the end, maybe Mike Johnson does that and Mitch McConnell, so their people don't have to take the votes. So you have to think about it in all these different ways. I don't know. If he really wants them, he'll get them. I'm not sure he does. I still feel like you throw them up there and so people gasp, and then Peter Hegseth, who's a horrible white supremacist who doesn't wash his hands when he pees on them, ends up getting on there because you're paying attention to this, and Elise Stefanik gets on there, and because, and what's her name, the one that likes to kill dogs, take them to the gravel pit, Kristi Noem gets on there because you're worried, about these worst people. And that's why somebody said it. Who said it? Who's smart? I think the Democrats should get up, as I've said before. I'm going to add this to one of my videos. I hope you guys will watch. I think they should literally stand up and in unison, come in, sit down, sit up in unison, and walk out. You're like, this is your party. You did this. You voted for Trump. You got this. We have no comment. Matt Gaetz, enjoy. You decide what to do. You vote for him or don't vote for him. Yours. I would do the same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. Let them own it. Let them own it, is what I would say. RFK Jr. got the brain worm around Africa. Well, that's not Africa's fault. RFK Jr., Jane, would have gotten a brain worm no matter where he went, because he has a particularly attractive brain to worms. And he's particularly attractive to all sorts of other worms, too, it seems like, in our media and out. Eddie Munster has way too many enemies, Jim. He does, and if anything, I think that would be what defeats him more than, that or McConnell, again. Did you happen to see Tony's X post yet? He sent it to me. If you saw me look down while Robert was here, he sent it to me on my phone, and I looked at it quickly. Is it the one with us riding? Are we riding on a tiger or a horse? I couldn't see it clearly, but I knew, he predicted somebody would do that, and he's a smart man. So I guess we're now forever going to be memed as Putin and Trump riding. And I'm going to be kind of pissed if they give me Putin or Trump's man boobs, because I work out, man. That's not fair. Okay? That hurts. But I'll check it out. MAGA Mexicans get ready for deportation. Yeah. See that guy I interviewed the other day who was like, it's okay. I'm all right. My parents are good people. They're not criminals. They're not going to be deported. And I was like, silly man, as he wore his Trump MAGA hat. He's Latino. He's in for a surprise. I feel sorry for his parents if they, actually they couldn't vote. So because they were, weren't able to legally vote. So he chose to vote to deport his parents. And I don't think they deserved it, but he does. So I'll feel sorry for them and laugh at him. That's kind of the way I break these things down. I'll feel sorry for people who are hurt that are innocent, be they Jewish, Muslim, Christian, white, black, brown. Again, I don't care. But I'm not going to blame whole groups because a group of people moved in a bad direction. But the individuals in that group who voted for it, no sympathy, none. Don't eat it, you'll get worms. Yes, worms. All right, guys, I'm going to have to shut down soon here just because we're at almost a 2-hour mark. Crazy kids that we are. What else do you got for me? Anything else? I mean, I hope you enjoyed this again. You know, there'll be plenty of more people on here who you'll want to get up and like, yeah, like I think a lot of you did for Brian Karam, who was on, and Brett DeResta last week we had on, and Tim Fullerton, who was an Obama guy. There'll be a lot more of those than there will be folks who will be people. But we need to talk to people we disagree with, especially not MAGA people. Again, core MAGA people suck. Fuck them. Wow, I just got myself demonetized. Damn it. Let's hope that one sneaks through. But when it comes to folks who, you know, disagree with us on some things, we need to win their votes. We really do. So Tesla lost 5.7% today. That is fantastic. I hope Tesla loses more every day. I have a video also coming out on Elon Musk. He's awful and horrible, and I can't stand him. I think that's about it, guys. I think I've got to call it a day here. So I appreciate you all being here. You're fantastic. You're awesome. There won't be one tomorrow, and I'm going to get my schedule out, I think, because I'm going to start doing Bob Seska's show, as I allow you know, on Tuesdays. So that's going to be a double day for me. I don't know that I can do 2 double days in a row. I'm doing House Sparks on Monday. So I think what we're going to do, you know, in the post-election shuffle, we're starting to figure this out. But I'm going to do a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday stream. I think that's going to be my block. You can catch me on Hal's show on Monday, either Bob's or mine on Tuesday, mine on Wednesday, either mine or Tony's on Thursday. And then, you know, the Friday, Monday, I have other work I actually have to do. I have an email fundraising list. That's my main gig. And I still have a PR client or two. So do need to sleep once in a while and actually hang with the kids because I love my kids and my cats, who are awesome. You guys want pictures of the cats? I will get those to you next time. Pictures, video, the whole thing. But you're awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you to anybody who gave me a super sticker. Thank you for super chats. Thank you for members. Please become members. YouTube, Patreon, all these great places. It's what helps me keep doing all of this. And obviously subscribe and find me on Blue Sky is the one I'll push for now. Till then, as the sun sets slowly in the west, I bid you a fond farewell, my friends.